Infidelity, disease, and faith after loss. This isn't the plot to a drama movie. This is Jackie and JFK's real life in its stormiest moments. Back before such relationships became fairly unheard of, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Charles Bartlett was a close friend and confidant of John F. Kennedy, so much so that in 1951, he played matchmaker for what would become one of America's most iconic couples. It was at one of Bartlett's dinner parties that John F. Kennedy first met Jacqueline Bouvier. At the time, Bouvier was working as a reporter for the Washington Times-Herald. At the time, she later explained to Edward R. Murrow, her professional interests came before any romantic ones. Shortly after meeting Kennedy, Bouvier interviewed him for her paper. When Murrow asked whether marriage or interviews with a politician required more diplomacy, Bouvier let her husband answer.
Well, now, which requires the most diplomacy? To interview senators or to be married to one?
Well,
being married to one, I guess.
Bartlett largely kept JFK's secrets, but once evidence of Kennedy's many love affairs came to light, Bartlett mused that his friend might not have been suited to marriage, but that he never would have become president without Bouvier by his side.
While Jack won the votes, she won the hearts of America.
John F. Kennedy and Jackie Bouvier dated for 2 years before announcing their engagement on June 24, 1953. As both were members of prominent society families, the announcement was a notable affair, and its historical significance only increased as the Kennedys rose to political power. So it's perhaps understandable that a venue would claim to be the spot where Kennedy first popped the question, and that there might be some competition for that claim. Two stories exist around where and how Kennedy proposed to Bouvier. The Omni Hotels and Resorts chain claim that it happened at one of their hotels. In their version, the couple was staying at Omni Parker House in Boston, Massachusetts, and eating in the hotel restaurant when Kennedy got down on one knee and presented Bouvier with a custom-made emerald and diamond ring. Omni claims it was the most romantic moment in the hotel's history.
We insist that this was the formal proposal and all the rest are alternative facts.
Unless it happened at Martin's Tavern. Martin's is an historic restaurant in Georgetown that was frequently patronized by Kennedy and Bouvier. The restaurant claims the proposal happened in Booth 3. They even got the statement of a witness, former ambassador Marion Smoke. But Smoke didn't claim to have seen the proposal, only that he saw the couple at Martin's on June 24th, and that news of the engagement circulated through the restaurant. The relationship between John F. Kennedy and Jackie Bouvier was complicated from the beginning. They had similar backgrounds, shared a knack for social engagements, and had a genuine attraction and affection for one another. But their engagement and marriage was as much a political consideration as a personal commitment. According to Robert Dallek's An Unfinished Life, John F. Kennedy, 1917 to 1963, Kennedy would have been happy to remain a bachelor. And at least one close friend suspected he would have had his 1952 Senate bid failed. But it didn't, and the realities of the time required any senator intent on higher office to be married. Kennedy was driven even then, although his father worried that his son would still get cold feet on the way to the altar.
You're pretty much in love with him, aren't you?
Oh, no.
For her part, Bouvier was under no illusions about the political component of her relationship with Kennedy.
She wrote in her diary that she had an intimation that Jack would have a profound and possibly disturbing effect on her life.
In letters to Irish priest Joseph Leonard, she expressed amazement at the level of ambition on display among the political class she encountered through Kennedy. She compared her fiancé to Macbeth due to the enormity of his appetite for high office. Bouvier also confided to Leonard that she had reservations about the impending marriage. Her own father was a notorious philanderer, whose cheating took a heavy toll on his wife, and Bouvier saw the same quality in Kennedy. When John F. Kennedy and Jackie Bouvier became Mr. and Mrs. Kennedy on September 12, 1953, they did so in style. Their wedding was held at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Newport, Rhode Island, and the reception at the Victorian Hammersmith Farm Estate. Both boasted a massive attendance. The wedding had over 800 guests. The reception, over 1,200. Pope Pius XII sent a blessing to be read. Robert F. Kennedy was the best man, and the wedding cake was over 4 feet tall. Musical entertainment included noted tenor Luigi Vena and the Meyer Davis Orchestra. Jackie's dress, accentuated by her grandmother's veil and a few choice pieces of jewelry gifted by John, remains a model for wedding gowns to this day. According to Vogue, the dress was designed by Anne Lowe, one of the first leading Black fashion designers, who built a career out of creating fashions for women of the social register. For how celebrated the look has become, it was actually a hastily assembled replacement for the original dress, destroyed by a burst pipe. Lowe's closest collaborator on the dress wasn't the bride, but Joseph Kennedy, who subsequently left Lowe's name out of the wedding coverage he arranged. The Kennedys honeymooned in Acapulco. John messaged his parents from there to report that everything was going well. According to Frederick Logevall's JFK Coming of Age in the American Century, 1917 to 1956, Kennedy's exact words were, "At last I know the true meaning of rapture." It's no secret by now that John F. Kennedy was not a faithful husband. Within 15 months of marrying Jackie Bouvier Kennedy, he was back to his womanizing ways.
Where sex was concerned, John F. Kennedy thought he was untouchable, invulnerable.
So wandering was his eye that he reportedly left his wife alone at parties to fool around with female guests. And in 1956, he carried on with several women on his yacht, even as Jackie suffered through delivery of their stillborn child. To what extent Jackie knew about John's infidelities and how she felt about them is a matter of some contention among journalists and historians. Author Sally Bedell Smith wrote in Vanity Fair that while Jackie was well aware of the affairs, she was often happy to feign ignorance. She would occasionally make private jokes or, in more unhappy moments, seek counseling from cardiologist friend Frank Finnerty, but she was resigned to it. She reportedly told Adlai Stevenson, "I don't care how many girls Jack sleeps with, as long as I know he knows it's wrong." Others have reported that Jackie was more confrontational about the affairs. Author J. Randy Taraborelli told People that tensions became so pitched that Jackie considered divorce in 1956, after the stillbirth. Her sister and her mother, both aware of John's affairs, convinced her to stay. They considered being cheated on an occupational hazard of being married to a powerful man. In a letter to Fletcher Knable, Jackie Kennedy described herself and her husband as icebergs, a small portion of their lives visible, the greater mass submerged. Among the matters kept below was how difficult it was for them to conceive a child. Jackie suffered a miscarriage in 1955 and delivered a stillborn daughter in 1956. When they did have a son, John Jr., he was born prematurely and suffered from weak lungs in early life. By the time John Jr. and their daughter, Caroline, came into the world, JFK was far less callous about his wife and children. He was at Jackie's side with her favorite flowers for Caroline's birth, and noticeably swelled with emotion when discussing his daughter. The couple were expecting a third child in 1963. But on August 7th, 20 years to the day that JFK was rescued during World War II, Jackie went into premature labor. Their son, Patrick, came 6 weeks early and, despite the best efforts of doctors, died of hyaline membrane disease within days. Both parents were devastated, but family and friends reported that the tragedy did leave one positive legacy. In the months remaining before JFK's assassination, he and Jackie were much more publicly affectionate with one another. Some of the ice, it seemed, had emerged from the depths. As the youngest man ever elected to the presidency, John F. Kennedy was seen by the public as a healthy, clean-cut shot of energy into the highest levels of power. But, contrary to the image he projected, Kennedy's presidency and his marriage were dogged by his myriad health conditions. In 2019, PBS published a list of all the physical ailments he suffered, including many that were kept well hidden from the public eye during John's lifetime.
If the public knew how many medical problems he had, I think it would have destroyed his presidential ambitions.
Besides a bout of scarlet fever in his youth, the president suffered from spastic colitis, prostate and urinary tract issues, allergies, such severe lower back pain that he was initially rejected from military service in World War II, and Addison's disease, a life-threatening hormonal deficiency.
He was so ill that his father had put cortisone treatments in safe deposit boxes around the country if he ever needed them because of his Addison's disease.
The steroids used to treat his Addisons led to osteoporosis, which only further damaged Kennedy's back. 7 surgeries between 1944 and 1957 couldn't fix it, and he fell so ill after one procedure that a priest was called to administer last rites. The steroids and other medications came with side effects. In 1962, according to The Atlantic, Jackie complained to her husband's gastroenterologist that the antihistamines used for his allergies resulted in depression. The doctor's answer was a 2-day treatment with the antipsychotic stelazine, with reported total success. But the rest of John's many ailments would follow him to the end of his days. It might well be assumed that a president and vice president would get along, or at least have confidence in one another. After all, the president must have confidence that, should anything happen to them, their running mate could serve as chief executive of the world's most powerful country. But, according to a series of interviews given by Jackie Kennedy in 1964, neither she nor her husband thought much of Lyndon B. Johnson. According to Jackie, John not only didn't like Johnson, but never wanted him as a running mate and actively feared for the country, should he become president. John discussed his worries with his wife and his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy. No thought was given to dropping Johnson from the 1964 ticket, but the Kennedy brothers discussed ways they might maneuver around Johnson to find a new standard bearer for the Democratic Party for the 1968 presidential election. The same interviews, kept private by the Kennedy family for decades, revealed Jackie's thoughts about the second lady, too. According to the Daily Beast, she described Lady Bird Johnson as so devoted and obedient to her husband that she seemed more like a hunting dog than a marriage partner. Context is important in this case. The interviews were recorded during tensions between Johnson and Robert Kennedy, and Jackie separated Johnson's deficient political skills, in her view, from his personal qualities. A marriage connected to a demanding job, let alone the presidency, will inevitably face some stress, but the ongoing health woes and extramarital affairs of John F. Kennedy only made things more difficult for Jackie Kennedy. The degree of independence Jack maintained shocked her in the early days of their marriage, and in private correspondence with Father Joseph Leonard, Jackie confided that life with a powerful public figure was taking its toll. As reported by the Irish Times, she wrote, "Maybe I'm just dazzled and picture myself in a glittering world of crowned heads and men of destiny, and not just a sad little housewife. That world can be very glamorous from the outside, but if you're in it and you're lonely, it could be a hell." Despite the many tensions and complications in their marriage, John and Jackie were always able to reconcile.
I am the man who accompanied Jacqueline Kennedy to Paris, and I've enjoyed it.
Jackie turned for help to the Catholic faith that she shared with her husband. In one of her letters to Leonard, Jackie cited her religion as helping her to find some good after the tragedy of her stillborn daughter, Arabella. She and John grew closer together, but after John's assassination, she suffered a crisis of faith. She told Leonard that she felt bitter and that only the hope of seeing her husband again sustained her belief.